Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, California's death penalty is declared unconstitutional. And San Diego gets lots more space for storing water. Now, we just need some rain. Also tonight, an in-depth look at a North County program helping victims of rape and child abuse.
And it's been a year since the Bob Filner scandal began and ignited a national dialogue about sexual harassment in the workplace. I'm Peggy Pico with the lingering impact and changes in San Diego. Plus, Del Mar braces for traffic jams as opening day at the track nears. How a new train stop could help and why some North County residents aren't on board with the plan.
And tonight we celebrate 50 years of a program turning kids on to science in southeastern San Diego. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. A federal judge has ruled California's death penalty unconstitutional. He vacated the death sentence of a convicted killer in Los Angeles, saying the system is dysfunctional. Quoting here now, he says the death sentence has actually become one of life in prison with the remote possibility of death, end quote. Now, since the death penalty was reinstated in 1978, only 13 inmates have actually been executed in California. 94 died before their sentences could be carried out, and 39 won appeals, taking them off death row altogether. Nearly all of the remaining inmates are appealing their sentences. 40 of those cases are from San Diego County. We have a link to the decision and much more about the death penalty in California. You can find it on our website, kpbs.org. State water managers have approved fines up to $500 a day for folks who waste water by doing things like hosing down the driveway. While the state struggles with the 3-year drought, San Diego now has a lot more space for storing water, as we hear from KPBS reporter Susan Murphy.
More than 200 community members and city leaders gathered in East County at the brim of the newly expanded San Vicente Reservoir. The ceremony marked the completion of the 117-foot dam expansion. It's the final piece of the San Diego County Water Authority's $1.5 billion emergency water storage system of reservoirs, interconnected pipelines, and pumping stations. The project will ensure the region has a 6-month supply of water in the case of an emergency or future drought. Water Authority General Manager Maureen Stapleton says the added storage space at San Vicente can hold an additional 152,000 acre-feet of water.
52,000 acre-feet will be held for emergency purposes only, and the additional 100,000 acre-feet will be used for what we call dry year or carryover storage.
Filling the reservoir is expected to take 2 to 5 years, depending on water supply availability and statewide demand. Kelly Rogers is Water Authority project manager and principal engineer. She says most of the water to fill the reservoir will be imported from the Colorado River and Northern California via the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California.
And the exciting thing about this project, we not only raised the dam, but we're actually able to fill the reservoir faster because we've connected it via 11-mile pipeline.
While the ceremony was all about water, the backdrop of tinder-dry hillsides kept drought at the forefront of discussions. The Water Authority and City of San Diego will share the cost of operating the expanded reservoir. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
A year ago, San Diego was rocked by sexual harassment claims against then-Mayor Bob Filner. The scandal eventually led to his resignation. Tonight, Peggy Pico finds out what's changed when it comes to sexual harassment in San Diego.
When it was all said and done, more than a dozen women came forward to accuse former Mayor Bob Filner of sexual harassment. Lawsuits, a recall campaign, and Filner's resignation prompted efforts to change the city charter and bring more awareness of sexual misconduct in the workplace. Here with an update are my guests, San Diego City Attorney Jan Goldsmith and SDSU Ethics Lecturer Wendy Patrick. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, Jan, the city is representing former Mayor Bob Filner in the sexual harassment lawsuits. How many are there, and are there any outstanding?
There are 2 pending lawsuits, and yes, we are authorized by the council to provide a defense. And there are several claims that were made against the city that haven't yet become lawsuits.
Can you tell me how many total lawsuits up until now?
I think overall we've had 6.
6.
Some of those may have been claims, maybe 6 or 7 with claims that never found their way into a lawsuit.
And how much is this costing the city?
Well, we paid $250,000 for one claimant, and we paid something less than $100,000 for some outside counsel. Most of the legal work is coming from our office that is absorbed in our overhead. So I would say at this point, somewhere around $350,000 plus our internal costs.
I understand that you are actually still meeting with the former mayor, Filner. How is that going?
It's going fine. Actually, yes, our lawyers are, and I have met with him too, and he's working on his issues, and I think he's dealing with them very, very well, and we get along very well. We have a good working relationship, and none of the kind of stuff, throwing things, yelling that I had to put up with, and my lawyers had to put, and other people did.
Previously,
he's a man dealing with his issues, and I have respect for that.
And Wendy, I know some of the women who took legal action for their complaints were targets of criticism. Some were criticized for their looks. Others were blamed for the mayor's behavior, or some were even called liars. How do you think that this high-profile case has changed attitudes on sexual harassment in the workplace? Do you think it has?
I think that cases like this across the nation raise the profile of really the awareness of what kinds of women can be victimized. And the fact that we had such a wide spectrum of victims in this case, that really characterizes a lot of cases across the country, that we can't necessarily say there's a certain kind of victim profile that's always going to be targeted. Cases like this, you have victims that are powerful, successful, sophisticated, not the stereotype one might imagine if you didn't have cases like this that have been in the spotlight over the last decade. And there's been a string of cases, both in California and across the rest of the nation, really around the world, that has highlighted the fact that, women of all ages, demographics, social classes and professions can in fact be targeted in this fashion.
And Jan, so if there's been some changes there, what's changed in the city policies and or the city charter?
Well, the city charter or the policies really haven't been changed. The policies on sexual harassment were zero tolerance. That's why one of the key reasons why Bob Filner is no longer mayor. We enforced the policy as the city council and the city attorney's office. What has in the charter still is an issue. It's a problem.
Well, there were some changes on the ballot to help get the be able to recall a mayor, correct?
No, there's not the change on other ways to remove a mayor or a city attorney that other cities have in their charters. For example, incapacity or and those kind of things. But what we're trying to do is streamline a little bit on the recall. But what has changed in the city of San Diego is that we have a much better environment, and people tend to respect each other a lot more. I think our city and our city staff have learned the importance of respect of other people out of this. And we had a very bad year. It was horrible, and from that I think we all respect and understand how good things can be and should be.
Let me bridge this over to Wendy then. In the private sector, so changes here in the public sector, at least at City Hall, how do you think things have changed, or do you think they've changed as far as men and women trying to deal with sexual harassment in the private sector?
Well, every time you have a case like this and like others where you have a string of women coming forward, sequentially, not all at once, you get kind of a ripple effect in a lot of different companies. And that relates not only to victims, but to witnesses, people who are empowered, emboldened, who might not otherwise ever have come forward to report what they saw, now see that really we're raising the bar as a corporate culture and showing that zero tolerance is going to be enforced in workplaces across America. And I think we see that every time we have a high-profile case that really sort of draws attention to this very real, insidious issue. Nobody can really define it in advance, nor do we necessarily know it when we see it, but we're learning that it really is something that collectively we can stop.
All right, well, we have to wrap it there. We are out of time. Cindy, Attorney Jan Goldsmith, and SDSU lecturer Wendy Patrick, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For 30 years, the Forensic Health Program at Palomar Hospital has collected crucial information from victims of rape and child abuse in the North County. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg takes a closer look at how it helps crime victims in their quest for justice.
This nondescript building in Escondido gives little indication of what goes on inside. People suspected of being abused arrive accompanied by a police officer. They meet with specially trained professionals, and they can count on two things: a comprehensive yet considerate exam process and strict privacy.
Everyone kind of knows intellectually that those types of places exist, and that's where women are taken, but it's the type of place where you never think you're actually going to be.
Crystal Harris was examined in 2008 at the Palomar Forensic Center after an incident with her husband. As a result, he was tried and convicted of a felony sex offense. Harris says the forensic program's one-on-one approach was comforting.
They don't make you deal with a lot of people. They know that's overwhelming, so they don't make you deal with a lot of people, and I think that's good.
Last year, the program saw 200 adults and 350 children.
When they come here, we have them come into a waiting room. And as you can see, this is set up for children because we do a lot of children at this facility.
The forensic interview, where patients describe what happened to them, is a crucial part of the process. Children under 14 are interviewed in this room. The conversation is recorded through a two-way mirror from an adjacent room, where police and a representative from the district attorney's office sit. Adults are interviewed in a separate space. Nurse examiner Patty Secor says everyone is also given a thorough medical exam.
This is a sample package that we received from the crime lab that has the equipment we need to do a regular sexual assault exam. It comes with swabs. These are what we use to collect evidence from various parts of the body.
Secor says what staff learn from the interview often determines the focus of the exam.
If they tell me that it was not a full sexual assault, I would need to know exactly where on their body I am going to look for evidence. Sometimes they say they have a bite mark. Sometimes they tell me they have bruises or bodily injuries.
In a separate exam room, Secor uses a black light to aid in her search for physical evidence.
By looking at their entire body, head to toe, we are able to see if there's any signs of semen or saliva.
All parts of the body where suspected injuries occurred are photographed. Secor says it's tough working with assault survivors. They're often emotional wrecks.
Personally, I can keep doing this work because I cannot have stopped what happened to that victim. My whole goal is hopefully to hold somebody accountable for what they did to that person.
The exam and interview are designed to be thorough. The goal is for the adult or child to tell their stories once. And staff say in interviews with children, the key is to keep an open mind. Kathy McLennan directs the Forensic Center's child abuse program. She conducts many of the interviews with children.
Although I have information about what the allegation is going in to talk to the child, it cannot drive the course of that interview. I've got to consider that there may have been misunderstandings about something, that the child's behavior doesn't necessarily indicate that there's been abuse, but that's a possibility.
McLennan is frequently called to testify in court. She often feels nervous.
And I'm thinking about, gee, I wish I didn't have to be here, didn't have to testify, and then the child will come out of the courtroom and he or she has just testified and they're like this tall. And I think, wow, I mean, talk about courage. I guess I'm just gonna, man up and go in there and do it.
Child sexual abuse and adult rape cases in North County are handled at the Vista Courthouse. Deputy District Attorney Tracy Pryor says the Forensic Services Program has been instrumental in getting convictions.
The work of the Forensic Center at the Child Abuse Program is directly related to our ability to hold rapists accountable and child molesters accountable.
The San Diego DA's office files about 600 felony sexual assault cases each year in North County. Thanks in part to evidence collected at the forensic program, they've achieved a 93% conviction rate. Palomar Health was forced to withdraw its financial support for the program earlier this year. The county and the private Golden Door Foundation came to the rescue. The forensic program is hoping to expand that kind of public-private partnership to ensure its long-term financial future. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
As conflict rages in the Middle East, 45 Palestinian and Israeli teenagers came to San Diego in hopes of bridging the cultural and political divides. KPBS reporter Matt Bowler has the story.
For 11 years now, the group Hands for Peace has brought teens from Palestine and Israel together to learn about each other's lives and how they are affected by the conflict. The goal is to foster peace through dialogue. This is the first year the group came to San Diego. They were joined at Borderfield State Park by teens from Mexico. The Israeli and Palestinians don't want their names used because they are afraid of possible reprisals for their involvement in a peace movement. This 16-year-old Israeli girl sees similarities between the San Diego-Tijuana border and her home.
It's easy to come into Mexico, but it's harder to go out, so it's just like the same in Israel and Palestine. The Americans, they live like an hour drive from the Mexicans, and they don't know much about them or the lives they have, and it's the same for us. Like, I have no idea what's going on inside of Palestine.
The latest rounds of bombings, strikes, and counterstrikes between Israel and Palestine hits home for these kids.
Back home, the situation is really, really horrible. Like, to both sides, it's so bad. And lives are lost, and people are losing so much. It's crazy how much we both lose.
Organizers hope these kids will build relationships that help them put an end to the cycle of violence.
In other words, it's easy to hate in the abstract. But when you say, I know that person's name, I know how they felt when this happened, of the Israeli man embracing the Palestinian man because they both had the common experience of losing a child. For them, they are forever changed. It is not now about political divisions, it's about family loss.
Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
Where the turf meets the surf, down at old Del Mar. Take a plane, take a train, take a car.
Tomorrow is opening day at Old Del Mar. Right now, you can't take a train to the fairgrounds, but there's a plan for a new train stop there. Peggy Pico is looking at the issue from both sides of the track.
San Diego Association of Governments, or SANDAG, has a plan underway to build a platform bridge and a double railroad track for a nearly 3-mile stretch between Solana Beach and Jimmy Durante Boulevard in Del Mar. But some Del Mar residents aren't on board with the idea. Here with further details are SANDAG's Director of Land Use and Transportation Planning, Charles Muggs Stoll, and Del Mar City Councilman Don Mosier. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, Muggs, I know you like to be called Muggs. So there's an ongoing series of public meetings about this proposal. Describe what SANDAG wants to build at Del Mar.
Well, we really want to build 3 different elements to the project. We want to extend a second track or a double track for about 2.8 miles, as you described. We want to build a seasonal platform for users at the Del Mar Fairgrounds for special events. And we also want to replace the Escondido Bridge, which is nearby there, which was built in 1916, nearly 100 years old, and needs to be replaced.
Well, Don, Del Mar's City Council actually supports this rail addition. What specific benefits do you think it'll bring to the community?
The main benefit is to get cars off our streets. If more people come to the fair via the railroad, we're hoping that will replace the car traffic, which currently causes a lot of congestion during fair events.
And I understand it's also going to help the Escondido Bridge?
Well, the new bridge will replace this old trestle bridge. It'll increase the flow of the river. It'll raise the elevation of the bridge, and we think it'll improve the environment, the local environment, if it's done in a very sensitive way.
Well, speaking of that, what are some of the key objections you're hearing from Del Mar residents?
There are 2 kinds of concerns. One is the impact on the environment, since we've just restored that San Diego Lagoon and it's working a lot better. The second kind of concerns are noise, light impacts from the nighttime activity on the platform, and also the fact that the train is now going to be raised up 8 to 10 feet, so it's going to be at a higher elevation and have some view impacts and be more in your face.
In Muggs, what is Sandag doing to mitigate these concerns?
Well, we've been working with the community for a number of months. We came out with an early alternatives analysis that actually chose one of 3 alignments, the one that's furthest to the east and furthest from the residents. And so we've been able to make some progress already. We've been working on studies that address things like noise and light that the council member mentioned, and those studies are under review by our federal partners that are funding a big part of this study, and we'll have those out this fall, and we'll make those available to all the stakeholders and be back out to the community to go over them and to be able to finalize some plans for the project.
Donna, is the City Council pleased with these sort of responses? Do you think there needs to be more?
I think we are pleased. It took a little while for us to get an initial response from Sandag, but then we realized how complicated this design phase is and how many levels of review there are. So we're patiently waiting for the next step, which will be this fall when we hear some of the environmental reports.
What do you see as the biggest obstacle for building this new rail addition?
The biggest obstacle is funding for the construction. The House just passed the Highway Trust Bill, which will extend funding for the next few months, but we really need a much better federal source of funding for these kinds of projects. We'd like to get this project done in the next 10 years, and without more federal funding, it's going to be difficult.
And on that note, Muggs, I know the rough estimate for this project is $142 million and counting. Where will that money come from?
Well, I think, as the council member mentioned, we don't have it identified yet, but the fact of the matter is, in our region, we've got a long history of getting projects ready to go, doing the preliminary work that needs to be done to define what the project is. When opportunities come up to compete for dollars, if you have a project that's ready to go or shovel ready, you're much better off competing with that kind of a project. So that's what we're doing here. Will
taxpayers be on the hook for any of this, do you think?
Well, the dollars that could be used, if they're federal dollars, they tend to come out of the gas tax, that sort of thing. But there's many different opportunities for funding that we'll be keeping an eye on as we move forward. But getting this work done is a key step if we're going to compete at all.
Well, I know Don mentioned we might be about a decade out. If everything goes favorably, when could you see this project starting, and what kind of timeline could we see as far as its completion?
Well, I think it would take us, if we found the money for the final design and to get it ready so that it could go to construction, that might take a couple of years to do that work and have it ready to go to bid for construction, and it probably would take at least a couple of years to do the construction itself. So if the funding was available, we might be looking at, you know, something between 5 to 10 years if we had the funding available. But that's why we get projects ready, is so we can grab those dollars when the opportunity arises.
All right, I'm sure we'll be following this much more in the future. Del Mar City Councilman Don Mosier and Sandag's Muggs Stoll, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy.
San Diego seafood lovers will have a new place to shop soon, an open-air fish market right on the downtown waterfront. Right now, fishermen sell their catches from a boat docked between the USS Midway Museum and Seaport Village. They actually ran into some bureaucratic barriers when they tried to bring their makeshift market ashore. County Supervisor Greg Cox stepped in, helping them get a one-year permit.
We cast out a long reel, hoping to get a big catch. And today I'm pleased to announce that we landed a whopper. We expect soon to have a bustling, popular market right here on our downtown waterfront that will offer local, freshly caught seafood.
The market is scheduled to open on August 2nd. Fish will be sold between 8 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. Cox says it will be as fresh as you can get. The Elementary Institute of Science in southeastern San Diego wasn't supposed to be a success. It started 50 years ago as an after-school program in a little house. Today, it's a state-of-the-art facility where kids from all over the county gain a love for science.
These kids are playing tag, but this game is all about how the immune system works to protect the body from viruses.
You've been tagged by a salmonella. You gotta sit down.
In this case, food poisoning. The lesson here, sometimes it takes a while for our body's defense system to fight off a virus.
So the infection's been beaten.
The Elementary Institute of Science has served more than 7,000 kids since it opened this facility 10 years ago.
So can anyone see where the inner membrane is on their egg?
It provides summer classes and after-school programs.
Anna, you have one. You have one.
using hands-on science projects to encourage interest in chemistry, biology, computer science, and much more.
It's a big deal to being able to come here and know that you have a voice, not only here, but in your community and the greater world.
Ashley Stevens literally grew up at the center. She's now a senior at Penn State University, who's helping out with the kids this summer.
I'm excited about the mural. I'm looking to do public relations within the government or even with an environmental agency, something around those terms. So bringing my science and my public speaking abilities into play.
The center's director, Doris Anderson, says it all started 50 years ago when a kid asked the late founder, Tom Watts, a school teacher, why the fish in his aquarium died.
And Mr. Watts says, I'm not sure, but let's look at some of the diseases that affect fish.
And so began the journey, where half of the students come from low-income and underserved communities and are less likely to have access to these learning opportunities if it were not for the Elementary Institute of Science. Next Wednesday, the center will hold a 50th anniversary luncheon at the Jacobs Center. For more information, check out their website, eisca.org. Quick look at the forecast now. Some more clouds along the coast. Temperatures mostly in the low 70s over the next few days. A bit warmer, though, in the inland valleys. Temperatures there in the upper 70s. As for the mountain areas, plenty of sunshine. Mid to upper 70s there. And the desert, downright hot, as high as 107 with plenty of sun. Tonight's stories are online at kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for watching. You have a great night.